Ketsuban by unknown author. Rhydon, use Fisher. The gym floor shook beneath Rhydon's feet as it let out a tremendous bellow. If this move hits. All at once an enormous crack opened in the earth. A gaping maw stretched across the gym floor, speeding rapidly towards the move's target. Closer, closer, and the fissure opened up beneath the opposing Blastoise, sending it tumbling down untold feet into the darkness below. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the tear was gone. The gym floor shone flawlessly under the cold, synthetic light, and Blastoise was nowhere to be seen. The opposing trainer's tears fell swiftly now, splashing silently onto the pristine tilling onto which his Pokemon had vanished. Where's Blastoise? Where did he go? The trainer was staring listlessly at the ground, refusing to move an inch. He was obviously in shock over the sheer magnitude of his defeat. Giovanni would have to remedy this. "Pay up, kid," ordered Giovanni in a low voice. The trainer acquiescently resigned, forfeiting half of his life savings to Giovanni's waiting palm. But he still refused to leave. "Go home," commanded the leader, now slightly irritated. "You're holding up the line." The trainer looked about himself in a dazed state, and noticed the challenger standing behind him, a small, black-haired boy of perhaps 10 years of age. "Oh, sorry, I didn't notice," mumbled the defeated trainer with a small nod, and he at last began to pace resolutely back towards the gym's front door. Giovanni turned his attention to the black-haired boy, who had stepped forward. He was wearing a red jacket over a black t-shirt and a red and white cap pulled low over his eyes. Giovanni was intrigued by this challenger. Something about him was unsettling. Something about his slow, measured pace and expressionless visage seemed somehow alien. But that was of no consequence. Nobody had ever defeated Giovanni's main team. He was not about to let this child become the first. "Welcome," spoke Giovanni in a cool, intimidating tone. "I am the Viridian City Gym Leader. Do you dare challenge me?" Giovanni rose to his full height. "I am the greatest trainer the world has ever known. I have defeated countless thousands in this very spot. Thousands upon thousands of championship dreams terminated right where you are standing. And yet you still dare to forever risk your only aspiration by blithely challenging my undefeated team?" The speech had been delivered flawlessly, and Giovanni felt quite proud of himself. Surely the child had now realized his insignificance. Surely he at this moment was quaking in his boots. And yet the challenger showed few outward signs of distress. Giovanni's oratory had reduced countless grown men to sniveling, crying imbeciles by means of that very speech. Yet here was a child, a whelp no more than 10, standing his ground. Rather than break down, the challenger nodded and stepped noiselessly forward. The effect was disconcerting, and Giovanni's voice displayed an imperceptible faltering. "Very well then, let us begin." Giovanni threw his first Pokeball. A crimson stream of light issued forth from the Pokeball, quickly coalescing into Giovanni's Rhyhorn. Rhyhorn was Giovanni's usual lead, and had served him admirably in the past by gauging the strength and identifying possible weaknesses of his opponents. The terrifying spectacle of the 3-foot-tall Rhyhorn's single-minded charge attack had caused many to resign their challenge in terror by itself. But the child stared unflinchingly at Giovanni's Pokemon and threw down a Pokeball of his own. But there was a problem. The device was malfunctioning. This was unheard of. Pokeballs were made on an assembly line now, and, as Kanto's only major export, each Pokeball had to be flawless. Those with faulty machinery were without exception weeded out somewhere in the manufacturing process. As former head of the Sylph Corporation, Giovanni knew that. So what was wrong with this child's Pokeball? Instead of releasing the customary beam of light, the Pokeball was shaking eccentrically, without any disconcertable rhythm, and emitting periodic bursts of red light from the central seam. As bloody sparks jumped across its surface, the Pokeball seemed ready to explode from the pressure of whatever was inside it. Suddenly, the Pokeball released its laser, but instead of the customary red, it was a pale and silky orange. When the light faded, Giovanni caught his first glimpse of the thing the Pokeball had vomited. It was a pile of trash just sitting there on the gym floor, and without warning, before Giovanni could get a closer look, the pile of trash expelled a stream of pale brown-colored liquid, hissing and spurting as it did so. "Water gun," commanded the challenger. The fluid squirted through the air and impacted Rhyhorn squarely in the face. Giovanni's face betrayed his worry. Rhyhorn did not usually survive any decently powered water or grass type moves. Yet, Rhyhorn did not falter. The pile of trash special must be completely pathetic for Rhyhorn to take such a small amount of damage. But something was wrong. Something was off about Rhyhorn after the brown liquid contacted him. Giovanni could sense it, though he could not quite discern what it was. Something seemed different about the shape of Rhyhorn's back or the pattern of his armor plates. Giovanni only became truly alarmed when Rhyhorn did not turn its head as usual to receive orders. He stood unmoving, frozen in the spot where he had received the attack. Giovanni walked around Rhyhorn to examine its face. He found it scrambled, with no discernible features. Various pieces of eyes, mouth, and nose were scattered haphazardly around its face, which resembled a disassembled jigsaw puzzle on a featureless gray background. Giovanni was aghast. Rhyhorn? Rhyhorn use Fury Attack. Rhyhorn! Rhyhorn was not fainted. It showed no signs of collapse or fatigue, but he was clearly dead. Giovanni cannot stare at the horror that his Pokemon had become, so he returned it to its Pokeball. He could not lose. His team was undefeated, and this thing would surely not prove a challenge for his stronger Pokemon. He decided immediately to move up a tier in strength, so he summoned Nidoking from its Pokeball. Nidoking emerged with a savage scream, but Giovanni's attention was focused on the pile of trash. As he searched for a weakness, he came to a sudden realization. Most of what he had previously assumed to be a trash consisted of discernible pieces of various Pokemon. Here was a Bulbasaur tail, there a Fearobeak, and a Blastoise arm, all haphazardly stitched together in some kind of abominable mass and mixed in with other things that he could not recognize. There were letters, numbers, pieces of signs, and buildings, and chilling geometric patterns that he could not even begin to identify. And it was distinctively larger than it had been 30 seconds ago. With each passing second, the thing grew. Giovanni thought he noticed. It was a slow process, but the pile of trash appeared to be steadily expanding without any external source. But maybe it was just a trick of the light. Nidoking, you thrash. Nidoking looked around for a moment, wondering where the attack was even directed. Nidoking was considerably smarter than Rhyhorn, smart enough to notice that there weren't any actual Pokemon in the arena. Nidoking turned to look at Giovanni, who, presented with what might very well be the last time he saw Nidoking whole, felt a sudden surge of regret. He pointed ruefully at the pile of trash, which had taken on an unmistakably crimson hue. Giovanni had seen it before. He thought he could not remember when. Nidoking never got a close look at his foe. He was not one to disobey orders, for Giovanni was a hard master, and so Nidoking charged. He rammed fist after massive, armor-plated fist into the thing, but it showed no signs of external damage or fatigue. It just sat there, glowing. As the word popped into his head, Giovanni knew what was about to happen. He tried to shout, tried a second too late to warn Nidoking of his fate, but Nidoking was so absorbed in this thrash attack that he had failed to notice, and so the end came quickly. Sky Attack, said the challenger. His lips, Giovanni saw, did not move when he talked, but remained frozen. In fact, he had not moved since the battle begun. Giovanni suddenly began to wonder if he could. The boy's clothes were becoming distorted, becoming numbers and letters and Pokemon fragments, one piece at a time. They were endless, mesmerizing geometric patterns in his eyes. Nidoking flew through the air and smashed against the ceiling of the gym with a reverberating crash. The collimated light from Giovanni's Pokeball intercepted the hapless Pokemon before the floor could. Giovanni did not want any opportunities to get a good look at his remains of his Nidoking. If only he had chosen a different move, Nidoking might have been saved. The trash was not just larger now, but spreading. The walls were splattered with it, oozing with Pokemon, and Giovanni's pristine floor was covered in refuse. As Giovanni reached uncertainly for another Pokeball, he discovered that his hand no longer fit securely around it in the position which he had become accustomed. For even he had not escaped the trash's corrupting influence. His hand, through retaining its general shape, was gruesomely disfigured. A Weezing's face, Wigglytuff's ear, and an Arcanine's eye, along with other body parts too damaged to identify, protruded from his skin in tortured, hideous combination. Giovanni tried to scream, but no sound came out. He fumbled with his Pokeball, tossed it onto the floor haphazardly, a novice trainer once again. Rhydon emerged, but even he was not free from the trash's scarring. His skin had a reddish tint, his spikes were misaligned with the ridge of his back. Giovanni could not order an attack. He did not need to. Rhydon was incapable of movement as Giovanni himself. Across the arena, the opposing trainer no longer bore any resemblance to a black-haired human being. He was already consumed, a pile of trash in a humanoid shape. Only a cap remained, pulled low over where the trainer's eyes used to be. Giovanni could just make out the black, embroidered capital letters printed on the front, Future Pokemon Master, the cap read. The boy's lips could not move, but the trash's attack came anyways. It let out a hideous scream, torn from the larynxes of every Pokemon in Kanto, savagely twisted and ground together to form a single, unending screech. As the monster grew still larger, its cacophony grew louder, and Giovanni's consciousness was fading fast. The walls of the gym turned to sludge, and Giovanni felt his body beginning to crumble around him. Rhydon was melting beside him, and the trainer and his Pokemon slowly merged into a single puddle of liquid death. The trash filling his vision at last invaded Giovanni's final thoughts as he saw the world disintegrate, and the abomination consumed all.